Hey, it's CJ. I'm in Shreveport, Louisiana, and I'm just across the Red River from beautiful Bossier City, Louisiana. Now I know what this is. Uh, this is Thrift Book is a really great online store, and used books that I can't find around here. This is a good place to get it from, and that's kind of cool. And if you watch your items, the prices will go up and down and everything like that. So it's almost like an eBay for books. I don't know. It's like an online thing. Anyway, but I know what this is, and I'm excited for it. Um, Hang on. Ha. So this is probably one of the most important pieces of my V franchise collection. I have a this love of this franchise from the uh, early to mid 1980s, and of course they rebooted it in 2009 for a 12 episode season, and then in 2010 they did a 10 episode season, and it was like um, they would have done so much better to take those to take those and turn them from a 1 hour um, procedural show that they really were. They were procedurals with a uh, science fiction element thrown into it. It was no longer really about uh, what this franchise really was about in the reboot. It has its own. Uh, there's enough retrospect now that I can look back and appreciate it, even though it's really different. Um, and I'm going to talk about that in just a moment, but I want to talk about this book. So, this book was very important, and probably of the novelizations of the V franchise, is probably the most talked about. And I have not read it. This happens. Okay, so during they did the in 1982 they did V, uh, and retro. It's the V, the original miniseries, which was a two part, 2 hour, two parts. It was like a what's that? Where is that? I don't know what that fuzzy thing was. Probably came out of the bag or something. I don't know. You know how these cameras pick up every single bit of fluff in the world. Okay, so the V, if you don't know, V, uh, 1982, uh, two. It was a 4 hour miniseries in two parts over 2 nights, and it is about a race of visitors, aliens, that come down and pretend to be at peace, but they're really here to um, drain the earth of its natural resources, including human beings, which will be food and everything. And they move among us uh, because they sort of look like us with some differences. Uh, you know, uh, reverberated voices and things like that, and they have to wear uh, eyewear to help them, with the bright lights and everything that they're not accustomed to. But anyway, other than that, um, they're pretty much humanoid until we get uh, uh, a good way through and we find out that they're not humanoid, that they're actually reptilian. So and then that became like a little franchise that went on for a couple of years. It had a really good run. They kind of watered it down. Um, this first one, this first miniseries, which was not this. I actually have the novelization. I have two novelizations of the original miniseries, though, because it was actually A.C. Crispin who wrote this. Also wrote the novelization. Is probably why he's credited here as co-author. I haven't read it yet, but this one takes place simultaneously. This is the East Coast at the exact same time that the visitors come and everything. So this is their experience, and it's the most talked about novelization. But so we had the original miniseries, and we had V: The Final Battle, which was a 6 hour. miniseries in 3 parts that came out the following year. And then after that, they started doing uh, a weekly series, and it was that, you know, uh, the it just wasn't. It had some good things, had some good. I don't know, but it was just kind of like, at some point, uh, it changed. The first one was really a comparison between. It was initially based on a novel called It Could Never Happen Here, and I forget who wrote it. And it was not about aliens; it was about humans, people, politicians, and it was about a political party uh, that became fascist in the United States, and anyone that opposed it, uh, they it was, yeah, everything that happened in World War I, World War II, uh, you know, uh, communism rule, fascist rule. Uh, that happened here in the United States in that novel. And they were going to do it. Kenneth Johnson was producing it and wanted to do it for TV on NBC, and they uh, thought, well, that's at this time, and this is like when they started talking about it, was the late 1970s, going into 1980s, and we didn't have internet, you know we didn't have open dialogues. Everybody, you really needed to be, hey, um, uh, patriotic, and if you know what I mean. If you lose your heartland and everything like that, if you're not gonna three networks and stuff like that, you're not gonna get if you offend people, they're not gonna tune in, and then you're not gonna get your advertising dollars. So probably would have been great as a movie, but what they were wanting to do on TV, it was not going to work unless they toned down the story. And what they needed to do was um, make it about aliens that take over the United States, and thusly the rest of the world too. So it could never, it could never happen here. It became V for victory and for visitors, and any other V word, that they could throw in at the same, uh, the symbol V, you know. Uh, I was kind of like, hey, that's our little symbol for victory and, whatever. So anyway, yeah. So, and then the rest of it's history, and it went on for about 3 or 4 years, and then so what happened was with the TV series, DC Comics decided they wanted a property, and so they started, and they wanted a property to do that was not about superheroes. So they wanted something kind of action and everything like that. And this kind of filled the bill. It was just science fiction enough and just fantastic enough that it would work as a comic book. Um, the 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 second season kind of got away from the actual, like, um, they kind of got away from the first season was mostly told from the perspective of the resistance to humans and everything like that, and there was a little bit of behind the scenes, melodrama with the visitors, but um, only just enough to give pause as to what's going on, um, then by the second season, uh, there's a it's like I said, it's a second mini series, and there's a 3 part going on to it, and they start out being kind of the same, some of the same players and everything, but you can tell between the visitors who have, total control of the world by now, and are, easily fending off any resistance that's happening. Um, at the beginning of that season, um, there's a, in their overconfidence, you can sort of tell that they start to get into the power play upon the different the squadron of ships that are around the Earth and everything. So it becomes like uh, a workplace drama in the spaceship. They even the resistance. There's a little bit of a love interest going on between the two leads, Juliet Parrish and Mike Donovan, and then of course there's the um, baby, the first crossbreed baby, and everything like that. So, um, yeah, as we get more into it, it becomes a little bit more. By that time, we start getting into the big melodrama soap opera epic of it. So it's like the lines that are delivered are like, you have like soap opera fade in, fade outs, all that kind of stuff. Like you're thinking of Dallas, Falcon Crest, big power plays kind of stuff. But there's not too much, and then you get to the TV series, and then what happens there? It becomes episodic. Uh, but also some of it there's some episodic stuff going on uh, for I want to say there were 21 episodes for a one season run, and it became a little episodic. And what happened was, in the midst of that, some of the episodes were standalone, and then some of them were part of a bigger story, and but the money for a weekly show, it's like, okay, you're starting to use stock footage, you're starting to use the exact same background props, and the newness of it kind of sort of wore off. And then the stories were toned down a little bit, like all of a sudden you've got like, adolescent boys, uh, kind of like, gee, Mike, thanks for saving us. You're kind of our hero. And it became like a little watered downish. It became, it started to look like some shows from like the 70s, maybe, which were great in the 1970s and even in the 80s and stuff like that. But they, yeah, they were placating, you know, uh, a little bit too much, and it lost its edge. Um, and as a teen boy, I loved these. I loved the effects. I loved the monsters. I love this and that, and everything. And it's also got this whole power play because the aliens. It's like, there's the Diana, who's the big baddie of the villain. She's, and then she's very ambitious, and her thing is to rise in the ranks among her. You know, she's kind of peaked as a science officer, and she really wants to end up kind of being the showboaty, the big thing, and she got where she was by having a love affair with the leader of her race, who's not seen or anything like that. So you get to the whole soap opera of it. Um, but yeah, she was awesome. She was a great character, played by Jane Badler. Now she got written in the remake, 2009. They were maybe going to do something like this for the theater, a V for the theater, or they were going to do a reunion show, whatever it is. And Kenneth Johnson was kind of attached to it, and what he was presenting, they kind of weren't going for it. Um, and so A.C. Crispin revisited his working of V, the original miniseries, and then Kenneth Johnson worked with him, and they, or added to or moderated that original work so that it would be the retelling of the original miniseries, but then where it led to would be where the story would go from Kenneth Johnson's point of view, and that leads into V, the Next Generation, or something like that, where um, I'll get into it, but first I want to talk about the novels. The novels started coming out when the TV series went to weekly episodes. Around the same time the comic book started, a once monthly comic book, and B's novels started coming out every 2 months, and that was going to be the thing. About every 2 months they were going to release a novel, and it was going to build upon the franchise. Star Wars was doing it, everything. So it really potentially could have, if they hadn't have gotten uh, a little soft with some of the storylines, because it lost its edge. It lost its severity, it lost a little bit of its realism, you know. And not I'm not talking about the mask and the aliens and stuff like that. I think people just kind of a little used to that. But I'm talking about this, you know, some of the characters got, even the legacy characters, you know, the ones that had been around since the first miniseries, the second miniseries, and then going into this weekly series, they were starting to, uh, I don't know, run out of story to tell. You know, at one point they were going to have to get to a point and resolve, and they left it on a cliffhanger. You know, and this was the first time I watched something. And then they ended the season, and it was like, could we leave it in case we get to come back? I didn't know what the hell was going on. I know I was pissed, you know, but it was a cliffhanger, but it was a cliffhanger that was done really well because it was left to interpretation, uh, and the interpretation could be that there was peace to be had between the two races. You know, now um, some years later, 2009, they what is presented is a story of the very end of the very first TV miniseries. They sent out a distress call to anyone in the universe who might pick it up, and they might decide, hey, let's go help Earth fight the visitors. And you know, and so this is somehow, it's like, you know, uh, they want to continue that story. But what happened was, and it was for ABC at this time instead of NBC. And what happened was, they decided to actually just reboot the entire franchise, retell it. You know, new characters, new everything. You know, same type of concepts, but then revisit everything. Well, so in the novel that Kenneth Johnson wrote, the treatment for that, for the opening of what it was, he turned into a novel and kind of retrograded and went back to, because everything that happened after the original miniseries, Kenneth Johnson really didn't have anything to do with, other than, you know, these were characters that he created, but he wasn't the showrunner or the writer or anything like that. So what he did was he went back and he wrote the sequel to his original miniseries, and this was The Next Generation, and these are another race of aliens come and they help Earth fight the reptilian visitors, and these are they're a collection of three different species of insect-derived aliens, and so their mannerisms are quite they're more like insects, whereas the aliens from the Sirius system, where these come from, they're reptilian, and so yeah, it's a little, um, it's some I read it. I had the book, and I read it. I was excited. I did a video about the book when I got it, and I read it, and some of it really worked for me. Some of it really didn't. Um, However, um, as a matter of fact, they retrograded it quite a bit. That originally the visitor, the visitor leader, was a male, and by the time they get around to this book, they had decided on representation, good or bad. That the uh, that yeah, that the visitor leader is actually a female, and whatever. It's um, I don't know. There are some things I liked about it that worked, and some things that I didn't. But out of everything, out of all the V stuff, comic books and everything, this was the most spoke about outside of the original miniseries and V: The Final Battle, which was the second series. This was the most talked about book in the franchise, and the most praised by franchise fans, fanboys of this of this, um, because it's an alternate look at the events of the first, uh, from the first arrival all the way through, carries you through the first mini series or whatever, the happening, those events of the mini series. But this is what was going on in New York at the same time. So, yeah, I'm excited to read it. And as you can tell, I've talked over 20 minutes about this. I'm going to shut up now. And I'm sure I will make more videos later. Love you guys. Love and light. Good night.